Alrighty, so thank you for responding. If you can hear and see me, that makes my job a little easier. Just a heads up, there is a thunderstorm running through my area right now. So if I lose you, I will come back. Unfortunately, I cannot help what the Mother Nature. So, but I'll try my best to keep good connection throughout this presentation. I want to thank everybody for coming to this webinar on how to use your electronics. I am Thomas Harris, Marine Specialist for Navionics and Navico Pro staff member. I don't work for directly for both of the companies. They are, one of my sponsors. I do a lot of tournament bass fishing, and I've, been lucky to be a part of the team as well, become very knowledgeable with the products over the past couple years. And a little background on myself: I worked in a tackle shop for 8 years in Ashland, Virginia, Green Top Sporting Goods, and that's where I got introduced to the electronics, to Lowrentz and Navionics, Garmin, Humminbird. That's where I kind of got my feet wet in the industry. Was working there, helping out electronics, troubleshooting, selling customers, Lowrentz and Navionics cards, and that's when I kind of got an interest in it. And it's I've seen how how a lot of people struggle with this technology. Now I've switched careers. I'm selling boats at Mayor Marine, located in Fredericksburg here in Virginia. And even here I'm seeing, large which these guys that have, dual units and, 4 units on a boat, but they don't know how to work it. And my goal tonight is to help you be able to, understand what you're using and what you're seeing. And I mean, unfortunately, there's, 4 or 5 generations of Lowrentz electronics. I cannot cover them all, or every setting or everything, you need to know on your exact unit. This is going to be I'm going to try to, hit 5 baseballs at one time, with this webinar, but we'll go over some of the features I like to use, which, regardless, sonar on, generation 1, 2, and 3, you can set it up the way that we'll be going through during this presentation. And then we'll be covering sonar, structure scan, and there'll be downside and a little bit of 3D because that's some troubleshooting going on as well. And just some, other food for thought methods, stuff, how I like to run my units, and some of the features I like to do that might not be in this presentation. It's just stuff that kind of pops through my head. So we'll go ahead and get this ball rolling. Alrighty. Alrighty. Alright. So we'll start with the presentation, how to use LorentzHTS with your Navionics card. Right here, we'll just start on this home page. What we're viewing right here, we're viewing a 4-way screen. So we have sonar on our left, we got structure scan on our right, and then we have down inside. This is a lot going on the screen. When you're running a 12-inch unit, it is a little bit easier to view everything on the screen. You can see in the left-hand corner of the screen. Let me grab a mouse. You can see up here, I'll have my depth, my water temperature. Come down here, I always like to have my time as well. So this is a screen I like to run kind of more so in search mode than anything else when I'm going around. And I don't have 2 units on. I at my console. I just have one unit, so I have to make the best of both worlds. So I find myself leaning towards this screen and newer water where I'm in kind of hunting mode. And you can see over on the right hand side, I got my Navionics card, and this was actually a brand new body of water I went to. I can't exactly remember where. I think it was somewhere out towards western in Tennessee. I was fishing out there, and I want to break this down real quick and show you what I kind of view, when I'm fishing a new body of water, and how I kind of like to determine where I want to go and what features I want to use, if I want to use down scan or side scan, something like that. So over on the right hand side right here, you see you have a bridge. Now this is something that come on the Navionics card. A lot of the community edits or some feature that was down there before the lake was built. So we have a bridge and a road and a point. And over here on this point, you can see how it kind of comes out a decent amount, and you have two creek channels coming down through here. And then over, if you follow this road to the right, you got a single dock. So this, from a fishing standpoint, this creek has everything you're looking for. And I find these locations based on using my Navionics. So right here you have one dock. That's pretty much one dock in this whole stretch. So if it's a lot of times I'll look on my unit and pick out the only dock in a creek or something like that, because you can run in there, hit that real quick, get out, and then you can see how the channel kind of swings around this point right here. So for those bass fishermen, that's a just kind of quick breakdown on what I look for: point, dock, two creek channels, and it should be game over. As far as over here on our sonar screen, you can see there's some stacks of brush right here. And right there, that's going to be a piece of the road that comes up. And we're going to go through, and I'll show you a little bit more of the slideshow of the palette. Makes the biggest difference to me when I'm viewing this. So this palette we're viewing right here is called palette number 13. So if you want to jot that down, I do recommend that. So, and that's you can put that on any HDS unit. Can't do it on a Hook or Elite unit. But palette number 13 is going to separate anything coming up off the bottom from the bottom, versus palette 1 through probably 9 does not do that. So when you're looking at palette number 1 instead, over here on the left-hand side, you might not be able to tell exactly what this structure is. Versus on this palette, it's separating anything coming up off the bottom, so I can identify, hey, that's a brush, that's a tree. And when you get over here to the green on this palette, that's going to tend to identify a harder object. So because this was a road bed, there's going to be some hard rock or something like structure on the bottom, which is indicating right here in this green. So I can see how that is. And then you have the bottom right here, which is black and brown right here. So it's pretty dense bottom. Down here on down scan, you can see the part of the bridge there. You got a hard object, like a very hard stump, and then you got scattered brush throughout here. So if you look back right over here to the bridge abutment, you can see how you have the brighter area, which identifies a harder bottom, softer bottom, darker the color. So, and we will move to the next. Alrighty, so when you're on your sonar page, this is kind of try to sum everything up into 4 units. For those that are running Generation 1, Generation 2 push button, Generation 2 touchscreen, I find this slide to be gearing more towards those users versus Generation 3 users, and I'll explain why. So when you're using the Generation 1 and 2s, they don't have the built-in Chirp. So everybody's always asking, what is Chirp? Chirp is a finer target separation. So the unit is sending out multiple frequencies out at one time. So you're sending out a 83, a 200 at the same time. So it's going to allow for a finer target separation. Chirp will have a 5-inch target separation. So if you have two fish within 5 inches of each other on the bottom, they would be presented as one fish, versus your standard 200 kilohertz frequency has a 18-inch target separation. Same thing, two fish within 18 inches of each other presents them as one. So that's going to allow your sensitivity to be a little bit different because you're using the Chirp technology. So for those that don't have Chirp on their Lorentz unit, I tend to take my auto sensitivity out of auto sensitivity, and I put it at 70%. From there, I kind of, let me take one step back. If I'm fishing shallow water, let's say 1 to 7 foot, I'm going to leave it in auto sensitivity because you will find a lot of turbulence and a lot of clutter throughout the screen in that depth. Once I get past, let's say 7 feet, 7 to 15, I like to take it out of auto sensitivity, put it at 70%. Leave it right there until you hit 40 foot. Once you get any deeper than 40 foot, take your sensitivity and do 71, 72, 73 at the max. You never should probably go back past 75 unless you're in about 100 foot of water. That way that you're getting enough ink on the screen. That's basically what sensitivity is doing. It's going to be more responsive. It's going to pick up clutter, debris, and I find a lot of customers taking their sensitivity and putting it way, way down. You want to lose the smaller bait fish, the thermocline, some very key elements to tell you where those fish are at in that water column. So, having it between 70 and 73%, once you're out in that deeper water, and that's when, realistically, electronics come into play and, a factor. When you're out in that 10, 15, 20, 30 foot range, when you're, 5 foot throwing a spinnerbait to a piece of wood, that's, you're just basically trying to find water temperature. That's all, you're not, looking on the bottom all that much. So, with the sensitivity, that's going to allow for the screen to be more responsive. When you go to your color line, that's more so kind of applying the density of an object. So what that means is the brighter color you see in an object is going to identify a harder, bigger object. So a lot of times if you go to your color line, it's going to be set at 76, maybe a little bit lower. Take that number, take your color line and bump it up to 78 or even 80%. So that's going to show you the size of a fish. Color line, if you ever, are out there on the water and you see, beautiful arch. The arch where you say that's a fish. I think I can catch that one. You always see color in it. So that's going to tell you how big a fish is. The more color you see in the arch, the bigger the fish is. If there's no color in it at all, it's going to be a small fish, trash fish. It could be, saltwater fishing, it could be croakers, freshwater. It could be, just a minnow or a white perch swimming at the bottom. So you kind of have to, and every unit can be different too, depending on, transducer placements. That's a webinar that will be 3 days long. We got the NCAA basketball championship tonight, so we got to be done by 9. No, I'm just kidding. So we'll just do a little recap. Sensitivity, take it out of auto, put it at 70%. Color line, put it at 78 to 80%. Let me just take a jump back for the guys that are running Gen 3s. I find myself in the Gen 3. The Gen 3 is to leave it in auto sensitivity because the unit's going to do the work for you with the Chirp function. I typically leave it in auto sensitivity, and the deeper I fish, I go auto +1, auto +2. That way I'm not making large jumps, and it's easier to find that sweet spot. Also with the Gen 3s, I'm not running a 200 kilohertz frequency. I'm running a high chirp. Excuse me, for those that are running the Generation 3, you have an option to run a high, medium, or 283 frequency, which is located underneath your sonar settings. I would put it at a high chirp. That's going to do, the 5-inch target separation. It's going to combine a 283 frequency at one time. Alrighty. Once you get that covered, so if you're viewing on your sonar screen right now, if you're at your unit, you would hit menu, and then you would see two options. You'll see advanced and view. If you go under view, go under advanced, you'll see something called ping speed. That's going to be telling the unit how fast to send the signal out. Typically at the console unit, I'll leave it around 6 to 18. And I found myself, putting my front unit at max. They've said, over time that you could burn up a transducer or whatnot. I haven't burnt one up yet, and I've been running them for quite a while. But running a fast, your ping speed at max, you want to get the max signal. So for those that are, bass fishing or have a unit at a front where they have the trolling motor, that's a key feature. Have it at max. That way when you're dropping your line or, you're trying to watch your line going down on your sonar page, you can do that with your ping speed at max. It's going to keep it up with it. It's going to follow it as it goes down, not having a delay. And another feature you want to turn on in, conjunction with using an A-scope, trying to, vertical jig or something like that, it's called an A-scope. That's the amplitude scope. For those that have ever used that circle thing called a flasher, that's like you take a flasher and you straighten it out. That's that first thing that transducer reads. It's going to be located under view on your sonar page. So I like to use that, on actually both units, on my front and back unit while I'm fishing, because, my front unit, that's the first thing it reads. So if I drop my line down, I can watch it go all the way down on my A-scope before it's physically on my screen. So when I'm trying to catch a fish below me, I'm using my A-scope more than anything else, because I can see where my bait's at, what it's doing, how far it's off the bottom. For those that, have just a center console with, one unit, I like to use it for running purposes. So if I'm, running throughout the bay or whatnot, I can watch that A-scope fluctuate up and down. So I know when I'm coming up on something or dropping off on something, and, it makes a difference. It's like I said, it's the first thing the transducer reads. Alrighty, so you'll have your A-scope over here on the right-hand side. This will be your A-scope. So that's the first thing that transducer reads right there, is that A-scope. Breaking down this palette again, palette number 13 separates anything coming up off the bottom from the bottom. So you can see there's 3 fish right here, right there, and right there. And then this is all brush right in here. Some pretty thick stuff. And there's a couple arches within this structure that might be fish. So you definitely see green in there. Once you get in this deeper brush, that's not going to be fish throughout there. That's just going to be, it's getting to kind of the roots of it. There's a smaller fish over there. And I mean, it's hard to tell, because I mean, I had 575 people sign up for this webinar. So, and I know not everybody's bass fishing. I'm a very avid tournament angler, but I do a lot of saltwater fishing as well. And I find what I do in the freshwater side be very beneficial in the saltwater side, to help distinguish what's what. And, it's just time on the water. That's a big thing. You can look at these 2 arches we have here, and they really don't look like a bass arch, just the way they're shaped. Just the size of them. A lot of times, I call them spaghetti strings. When I see spaghetti strings on a graph, for some reason, it's always bass. Just the way they position, they're swimming up, they're active. I typically don't see too many bass that look like that on the sonar screen. It's kind of just takes time getting out there and looking at it. But a bass has a kind of distinct arch like that. It's just a very quick, a V. That's what it kind of looks like coming through up the water column. And normally it's, a couple fish like that. Alrighty. So this will be the Mighty Structure Scan. And I got some screenshots after this to show you too. This is always a struggle right here. This is a big thing. Hold on one second. So the structure scan can be very challenging. It's all based on, what am I looking at? What do I see? Or just something's out of whack. So we're going to go through and kind of break down on how you should run your unit, what palettes, contrast, stuff like that. So with structure scan, I tend to run side scan probably 75% of the time. That way I'm covering such a large radius. I can see an object 60, 70 feet to my left and right without the transducer being physically over top of. And that's a big thing. Downscan's great for, clarifications. If there's something on my sonar screen, I don't know what it is, I will go over to downscan and pick it up and, see exactly how it's laid out. Or, sometimes sonar, it's kind of hard to tell. But other than that, side scans is my best friend. So getting into that, contrast, I typically take my unit off of auto contrast and put it at 64%. And that's, probably roughly around 1 to 10 foot, maybe a little bit deeper. Having that contrast at 64 seems to make a difference. And then anytime I get over that depth, I go up a percent at a time. You never want to go up very fast in a percentage. That way you're just going to lose, the place you're at. You don't want things too bright when it's just like glowing, because you won't be able to see the definitions in rocks or transition areas between a hard and a soft bottom. So you can start at 64% and just kind of, go from 64 to 80 or 68% and see how you like that. Different lakes and different, even water clarity makes a difference, on your contrast. It seems like, dirtier water, I have to back down on my contrast. And, when I'm going around looking for bait or something like that, I tend to run my contrast at a higher setting. I'll tend to run it at 70%. And that's, the whole screen's bright, but I can pick up that, ball of bait further out to the right with my contrast higher up than, I normally run it at 64. If you don't remember any of these numbers or you don't have to go by these exact numbers. I just kind of threw these together, a couple months ago. You can always just leave it in auto contrast if you can't remember what I've said for running this setting or whatnot. Just put it in auto contrast. Make sure it's in auto contrast. Don't do auto contrast -5. You never want to see that negative number. You can do auto +1, auto +2, but never do negative. And real quick, as far as your contrast in deeper water, that the screenshots I showed you before, I was in 40, 56 foot range, so I found myself running my contrast higher up, especially in really deep lakes. There's one by us called Smith Mountain Lake here in Virginia, and that place is, you get off the bank 80 foot, and I tend to have to run in my contrast to like 75, even 80% at sometimes to be able to see the standing timber, stuff like that, fish over top of them. So all depends on the place you're fishing. Preference wise, I mean, this is, you know, this is not set in stone. This is, everybody has their, you know, their own color. I found myself to run palette number 8. That's just me. Purple Sifa highlights bait, highlights fish, structure very well. It just has a, it seems like it has a better separation, easier to determine what's what on that palette. You know, palette number 5 is famous too. I mean, that's another good one too. I mean, you can just kind of leave what you have and, you know, maybe bump around with your contrast. As far as frequency goes on there, 455, that's better in shallower water. Once you get in deeper water, it seems like you broaden out to you know, a 800 kilohertz, and seems to be a little bit better. I mean, that's, you know, 100 footer plus for 800 kilohertz, but 455 is the best one to run on your structure scan. Alrighty, how to read side scan. So let me see if I had a pen. All right, so this is your down scan in this cone angle right here. Hold on, I'm trying to use this thing. All right. All right, so this is your side scan here. And you can see this area right here is down scan. So that's what's underneath the boat, is this area right here. That's what you, when you're viewing down scan, that's what you're viewing, is that stuff right there. When you're viewing side scan, this is what you're viewing. You see that center line right there on your side scan? That's this line right here back behind the boat. That open area is everything from here out to here is that open area you'll see on side scan. And then once you see further out to the side on it, this is what's shooting out and coming back right here on side scan. So that tree right there is being captured on side scan. Now, if this tree on the right-hand side was underneath this angle where you see down scan cone, it's going to reflect it on both sides. So it's, you know, when something's underneath the boat, it's going to reflect it on both sides. You know, it's not, you know, two separate pieces of structure. They're on both sides of the boat. Now, one of the biggest things for reading side scan is your range. That's absolutely probably the most critical thing. I've seen a lot of customers have their range so tight in, it's not even funny. And, you know, take it out of auto range. Go up there to range on side scan, and you'll see auto. Take it out of auto, do 3 times your depth is the distance you want to be shooting out on your side scan. That's probably the most important thing in this webinar, I could say, is expanding your range further out. 3 times your depth will be the proper distance. So, and you know, when you're using side scan, I mean, it really gets effective once you get in 10 feet, probably 10 foot or deeper is when you can use side scan and be able to pick things out. Now, one thing with the Lorentz transducer, it has 3 elements in it. So they have a true down scan imaging when you're viewing side scan. So it's using 3 parts. You have an element on the bottom, which gives you down scan, have an element on the left to capture all this, and have an element on the right to capture all this. So Humminbird users, they actually don't have a true down scan imaging. They don't have an element on the bottom of their transducer. They just compress the image. So they bend the side scan images in to make a down scan. So, and that's why you see on, you know, the Humminbirds, they have a very small line. Like they're running, you know, stuff further, you know, closer into the boat to be able to see it. That's because they are not using a true down scan imaging. So this area you see right here, the down scan area, that changes depending on your depth. The deeper you fish, the larger this area is going to be, within the down scan area. Once you're using side scan, that's the further it's going to be able to broadcast out. Once you kind of train yourself, you can go 120, 130 feet and be able to pick up stuff. It gets a little tougher to find transition areas that way, but you can practice to get yourself better at using side scan. Alrighty, so right here I'm showing you the difference between a 800 and a 455. So this is a 800 up top, of course, where you see 800, 455 below. You can see the difference. Same range, 60-foot range, running in a 11.9 depth of water right here. You can see where my range is at. That's where your range is always going to be located at, is in the bottom of the left and right hand corner. Contrast, 64%, palette, number 8. I was using at the back unit, so it says source this unit. So center line right there, running this long scale. This is actually pads coming up. I fish a river system here in Virginia called the Chickahominy River. Phenomenal fishing, and getting in this time of year, pads are coming up. Makes the biggest difference because guess what? Pads hold heat, heat hold fish. So I use side scan to find those underwater pad clumps. Something like this on the left-hand side right there. It's at about 40 feet is a good little clump right there. And I'll go through I might have some other screenshots of, some different objects, stuff like that. We can go over and kind of break it down, tell you what you're looking at. Something like this right here. You'll see a lot of stuff like that. You see on the left-hand side, there's little bitty shadows. What that's going to represent is a shadow. So imagine this is a piece of brush or something, or stump, let's say, sticking up right here. This is your side scan angle being shot out. So when it's hitting this object, it's going to create a shadow on this back side. So the longer you see a shadow is identifying how tall that object's sitting off the bottom. So it's a very small shadow. The light just kind of hit it real quick. But if an object's really tall, it's going to broadcast a longer shadow. If you ever use structure scan and go past the dock, you'll see these long little white black streaks going on the side of your unit. That's the poles next to a dock. So, and same thing as far as brush. You'll see these little bitty, shadows right there, and that indicates a stump or a rock or something like that. Alrighty, so pretty much went over this for those that have side scan. Run a Generation 2 push button or touchscreen, and a Gen 3. You can change the layout of your palette. So my palette of choice is I'll have sonar, GPS, and then you can change the bottom box to run side scan. I always, whatever I do, I want side scan in that bottom box because it's a wider view. It makes sense. I don't want side scan, which has such a large radius, to be crammed up in a little box. It's harder to see. So for those customizing your pages, put side scan in the bottom box. That way it takes up the most room. You can see, the more screen, more fish, more structure. Alrighty. So, side scan and down scan, there's no right and wrong. Both have their plus and minuses. So this is a, example of how important side scan is in conjunction with down scan. Over here on the down scan, you can see that there is some type of structure, lateral bars sticking up off the bottom. You have no idea what that is. That looks pretty crazy. Versus when you come over on down scan, you can see how this object is laying out. You can see even over on the right hand side, it kind of split it up, but you can see how this object's supposed to be. That's what side scan is going to do. It's going to take everything and kind of lay it out on its side, because it can't show anything coming up in a three-dimensional view, not until we get to 3D structure scan. So certain objects, how you go over them will be presented better on side scan or down scan. Typically, if I'm finding something laying down on the bottom, I want side scan because it's going to draw that box, that log laying on the bottom, versus down scan is going to be harder to pick up. So that's an example of how side scan can be important, trying to find certain structures depending on how they're laid out. Alrighty, for those that are running a Lorentz unit with a Navionics card, there's a couple things I like to set up going through the unit, and we'll just go over that real quick. So if you're on your chart screen, you see everything looks a-okay. Hit menu. When it'll bring you to menu, you'll see chart options. You click on chart options, and then you'll see a couple things I can't remember. Then you'll see view and settings once you've clicked on chart options. When you click on settings, it'll bring you up to another page or another box, and you'll see something called safety depth. Safety depth is very, very important. For those that have never heard of safety depth and have a Navionics card, check this out, because it's automatically, let's say you're a brand new Navionics customer, you get a Navionics card, you go home, update it, take it, put it into your unit, it's automatically going to set it at 60 foot. And what that's going to do, it's a shading, which we're viewing here. You can change that shading between 6, 18, 30, and 60. Preference, I like mine at 18 feet. So what that's going to highlight, we'll look on the screen right here. Everything in white you see will be 18 or deeper. Everything in blue is 18 or shallower. So 18 foot or shallower is in blue. So you can find certain areas, certain contours, certain humps. Possibilities are endless with using a safety depth range. It's great for navigation purposes. You can see if you're coming up on a long point or a shoal. Fishing purposes go, it tells you a lot. Tells you everything. Especially 18 fishing in lakes, rivers. It can be a little bit too deep, or depends where you're at. But I use the safety depth to kind of pick out where I'm going. This is kind of unusual bank long point that comes out right here, but you can see the white, which I have a safety depth of 18 feet. You can see how it bumps up against that bank. That's ideal for a fish. And you can see in the blue, you got shallower water because it's 18 feet or less. And then you can see a point here, and how it cuts in right in here. So very, very ideal fishing location, and I've found it based on my safety depth. So I might come over here, and I'll follow these numbers so you can see how out here it says 24, 30, 50 way out here, versus this side. It kind of, there's a steeper drop over here. I got 40 right there, versus over here, I'm looking at the same area with 30. So, for those that are, bass fishing points or something like that, it kind of tells me where I need to sit. A lot of times I might fish this point and cast in this area right here, but, you might, leave. You might not look on your chart to come over here and fish this little spot. I can sit down deeper and it's a steeper drop coming down, or I might come over here and fish. There's another point over here somebody might have missed. So based on safety depths, you can find a lot of key locations. You have another feature too called depth highlight range, which when you back out, you'll see view and settings. You go to view instead, and you'll see down at the bottom depth highlight range. Plug in a minimum, put in a maximum depth. It'll highlight everything in white between that depth range. So kind of like safety depth, but it's more filtered. You can filter it between 6 and 12 foot, and it'll show you everything in white between that depth range. Great for, you can do anything with that. I've used it for striper fishing, bass fishing, even cobia fishing, trying to find certain areas, certain contours based on the depth of water we were finding them in. So very, very helpful technique as well. For those running a newer Navionics card in their units, Navionics Plus, Update, Platinum, check your fish and chip option, which is right above safety depth. Not safety depth, excuse me, depth highlight range, which that's public information myself. Somebody has sent in to Navionics to make a more detailed map. So turn that on, you'll be gaining everybody's information submitted in to make a more detailed map for everybody. So take, a regular map, and it'll make it, HD, make it 1 foot contours, high definition. It'll also apply anything that has been changed, because Navionics cannot be at every body of water in this whole country at once. So they already have the map there. It's just you can apply what information you want to it. So over here on the left is a depth highlight range. So that's what I was talking about right there. It's a great function to use for summertime fishing, wintertime fishing. You can find a million different ways to use that between 20 and 30 feet, so you can see where the contours are based at. When you're viewing a map like this one, the closer you see the contours, or the darker the map is, identifies a steeper drop. When you don't see that, contours are more spread apart. It's more so just a flatter bottom. Alrighty, so with this, over here on the right hand side is a safety depth. So that's kind of option A. Option B, what's what? You can see the area right here, how the point's kind of shaped out versus the depth highlight range. And you can actually run this chart at the same time. That's what I would do if I'm really trying to fine tune a pattern, is I'll sit down, and all the units actually have this. This is something you can do on all the generations. It's chart plus chart. With touchscreens now, you can do chart plus sonar, push buttons. This is, a very helpful tool to use, is chart plus chart. And then what I'll do is create one over here on the left with a safety depth of, or depth highlight range, excuse me, I get them all mixed up. Depth highlight range of a depth, and then right hand side, I'll do the other screen with a safety depth. That way I don't have to keep turning off a function, turning it back on. I can see what I'm viewing to pick the ideal location. What I'll also do with this screen, minus the fishing purposes, I use it for navigation purposes. So what I'll do is, for instance, let's say on the left-hand side of this screen right here, on option A, I'll take this chart, and let's say it was my boat location was over here. I'll have option A zoomed into my location, very close, so I can see my boat, where my boat is, my contours. On option B, over here on the right-hand side, I'll have this one panned out further, so I can see what's ahead 3 to 4 miles ahead of the boat. So I'm not, for those that have been using LorentzHTS, you'll find yourself, if you're using chart while you're navigating, you're zooming into your location, then you're zooming out to see where you're going, back and forth, back and forth. Chart running a chart plus chart takes all the headache out. Have one screen zoomed into your location, one screen panned out, so I can see way, way ahead of the boat. Pretty cool. Alrighty, this is just how to go through Sonar Chart Live. All right, I'll just run down this. I've seen this a lot. This might be happening on some of y'all's units. Is water temperature. If you have two LorentzHTS units, water temperature might somehow go away, especially when you have an Ethernet cable between the two. I can make you look like a Lorentz genius in front of your friends because everybody has had this problem. So if your water temperature goes away on your LorentzHTS unit, hit menu. I mean, I'll do this two different ways. Push buttons, hit menu, and then go down to network. Touchscreen guides, hit pages, then go to settings, and then go down to network. When both of y'all are on network, click network, then you'll see something called data sources. Click on data sources. Another thing will pop up. It'll say, GPS. I'm trying to think what else it says under data sources. GPS, a couple other things. Then you'll see sonar. Click sonar. When you click sonar, you have two different things you have called water temperature, depth, water speed. And then in parentheses next to water temperature and depth, you'll see something called global or local settings. So all you do is take your cursor and make sure it's in line with the water temperature where it says global and hit menu. Then you'll see a drop-down box where it'll say scope. Say local or global, put it on local. Once you have done that, it'll say water temperature local, and then a box will be below that. It'll say transducer type, or not transducer type, it'll say your device list. It will say what transducers it's picking up. And typically I like to put check mine and sonar this device. If you see something called invalid next to it, it should be another option. But, if it says invalid, then you might have to dig a little bit deeper, but that might be another day for that. So once you've done that, do the same thing under sonar, or depth, excuse me, is selecting local for the scope and picking sonar this device. Alrighty. We'll keep going. All right, that's one down. Time to start another one. All right, this is going over more so structure scan settings. Before we get started into this, I'm just going to go over some other things I like to do that might help, others, learn a little bit more about their unit, or, kind of fine tune it. One thing I have been doing for the last 3 years is, as far as my trails go on my Lorentz unit, I like to keep them organized. I found myself one time in a very sticky situation. I've been fishing for 3 or 4 months around one body of water, and I went to delete the trails, and I forgot there was just one little bitty run I made that was in very shallow water. That it's a cut through, saves time, and I deleted that. Fortunately, you can't go back and delete one little bitty trail out of a large trail. So I started kind of filtering my trails depending where I was going. So let's say tomorrow I want to go to a lake around here, Bugs Island. I want to go into my waypoint routes and trails, and I want to create a trail tomorrow for Bugs Island. This is on the front and back unit. So once I've done that, I'm down at Bugs Island, I'm fishing. All my trails are going to be recorded in that file. Let's see, 2 days from now, I decide to go to the Outer Banks, go rock fishing or flounder fishing. Well, I want to create another trail under waypoints, routes, and trails called, let's say, Outer Banks. So I'm fishing down there, and all my trails are being recorded to the Outer Banks, not Bugs Island. So let's say I want to go back to Bugs Island. Well, I want to stop my Outer Banks trail. I want to continue my Bugs Island trail. That way, when I go delete it, let's say want to, trail one, I'm not erasing everywhere I've been. So every body of water I go to, I create a different trail for that. So once I leave that place, I stop the trail, and then I start or continue a trail to a place I've already been. That way the file one will stay smaller versus fishing for a year, hitting 30 different bodies of water and automatically deleting your trails or something like that. I can kind of filter it through, and I can see the places I've been without losing them. So that's a very helpful tool to use. Another thing I'll do is under my waypoints is I create a different waypoint for every year. So like I'll take the X icon, 2017, I'll mark all my brush as a pink X. Back in 2016, I marked any brush I put in or found in a blue X. Before that, I marked it in a green X. So every year I change the color of the icon I mark brush in, so I know how old that brush is. I don't do it too much with rock. I just leave rock the same thing. But I find myself marking fish in an icon many, many times. I'll put down when I catch a fish, I hit the waypoint button to mark that. If it's a grass area or something like that, where the fish tend to be clumped in, I'll make sure I mark that location. And that way, I can, I don't mark every single fish I catch, but I've found when I catch a nice fish and I hit waypoint and mark it, it always marks the depth the transducer is in. So after I catch 3 or 4 nice fish, I'll go back and pull up the waypoints of where I caught those fish, and it'll bring up the name of the waypoint, but also say depth. Say the depth you mark those waypoints in. So I can say, okay, I caught 3 fish when the boat was sitting in 15 foot. Well, guess what? I need to find other places where the boat needs to sit in 15 foot. So give that a try too. That might help. All right. I'm going to keep rolling through. I know I'm getting some questions. I'll try getting those to the end. But I'm going to get through this a little bit. So I already showed you how to read side scan. We already went through this right here. This has more so screenshots I wanted to show y'all between the two. So over here on our side scan, we're in 45 foot, I believe, 100-foot scale to the left and to the right. You can see over here to the left where that big arrow is pointing, that's a bridge abutment. Underneath the bridge, you can see the long shadow identifying that object sticking off the bottom. And you can see the cross beam right there. And you see this haze coming through here too. I got another palette I'll show you too. That's kind of identifying hard returns, kind of reflecting light. So if you ever see that on side scan, you'll see this bright haze coming off of it. It's the light's reflecting off that object. It's just shining off. It's a reflection. So that indicates a really, really hard bottom. Over here on sonar, you can see I've got a couple really good arcs right there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So a lot of times this identifies all right, I think we're running a little bit of Alright. Alright. Just somebody send me a message on what screen you're seeing at the moment. I'm on GPS, sonar, and side scan. All right. All right, hold on. Ha! There we go. It should be good now. I'm on side scan, sonar, and GPS. All right, hold on. All right. All right, let's see where we at. There we go. All right. Okay, now there we go. Sorry about that. I'm no computer genius. I'm a fisherman, so you know how sometimes technology can be so, and webinars they're not bad, but there's always bugs in them, regardless of electronics. So we'll come right here to our side scan. So this will be side scan right here at the bottom. We have GPS, and then we have sonar over here on the right hand page. Let me just go back because some are saying they didn't see the bridge. So this is a bridge I was talking about. I apologize. It's a bridge abutments over here on the left. You see a shadow coming off of them, representing how tall that object's sitting off of. And you see the haze on the screen that identifies the reflection coming off of the bridge abutments. Then you'll have over here on sonar, you have a couple fish right there. And you can actually see the thermocline on this right here. So this is what you're viewing. Here's the top layer, and here's the thermocline. So where those fish are sitting at is the thermocline. It's 84 degrees. It's summertime. It's hot. Most of that oxygen is right there. So that's what you're viewing. So go to your local lake when it's hot as crap, right around, look for this haze. That's where the fish are going to tend to be. So the thermocline is 30 to 35 to 30 foot. That's where the thermocline is. So a lot of times when I'm using side scan, you know, I'm looking for, of course, fish, moving fish, but I also use it for marking, you know, the distance from the boat to that object. Now, remember, when you use that cursor, it's not marking from your boat that's, you know, 40 feet up, you know, gone to this waypoint. It's marking from where that transducer was sitting in the center line out to that object. So that's how it's measuring. It's not going this way all the way out here. It's going from that center line to that object, how far it is, 55 feet from where that transducer was. That's a school of fish. Further out to my right hand side, you see how the fish over here on the right hand side going to be reflected over here on the left-hand side, more so underneath the boat right here. But the cool thing, what I like about it, is when I take the cursor and I put it on a fish, my chart will reflect. So if you look on the left-hand page up here, my cursor reflects on my chart screen, and there's my boat position. So what I'll do is touch an object. It freezes the screen on side scan, but I can take the boat and watch it turn all the way around to that object and catch that fish. These are actually schools of stripers. These are not bass, but I still like this screenshot when I was doing a lot of striper fishing. You've probably all seen this a time or two. It's this big blob right here. This is a lot of bait right here, a lot of bait and stripers. So it's, the stripers are moving targets. They're trying to catch bait. And if you look down here on our right-hand side of our side scan, you'll see the brighter objects right there. That's going to be your bigger fish within that school picking it up. So they're chasing after the smaller bait fish. And you can see right up here is a fishing line going right to the fish. But break down this while we got this up. You can see over here, you got this area with a little bit brighter bottom. So that's, again, a transition area. I'm running a 60. Just don't mind that. That's in our depth, but a 100-foot scale and 41 foot. So this is an example of, the haze I was talking about. The harder the bottom is, the more haze you'll see, which you see it right up here. And all this stuff you see throughout the water column is going to be just trash fish. They're just smaller white perch or whatnot, not necessarily bass. They could just be schools of shad or bass or stripers like that right there. Alrighty, so this is just a zoomed in shot of down scan versus side scan. So you can see over here on side scan, the brush is not actually on both sides of the boat. It's underneath the transducer. So that's why it's on both sides. You can see the brush very clear on down scan because it's within that cone angle, versus side scan reflects on both sides. You can see there's a school of bait out there to the right. If you were crappie fishing, you would see a lot more of these little smaller dots throughout the brush pile, which will identify crappie. Alrighty. So here's some more screenshots of kind of what I run into of inactive fish a lot of times that are stacked right on top of each other. So if you look on our sonar page in the right-hand corner, you see how the fish are actually laying pretty much right on top of each other. Kind of can be mischievous what those fish are, but because I was using my color line, it helped me identify those were fish, not some type of bottom structure. Down here on our side scan, you can see where those fish are sitting at. Seeing further out to the left and right, and actually you can see there's some reflection over here on them on the left-hand side. I know my internet connection might be getting a little weak. And here again are fish moving further out to the right-hand side where my cursor is. And there's more so I came across these fish and they actually started kind of coming and moving out underneath the boat, kind of splitting to the left and the right-hand side. Here's moving fish right here. These are this is a school of stripers I took a screenshot of, and then pallet number 1, and I'm running pallet number 9 here, just messing around. But you can see the longer streaks on side scan are your fish. And this over here is on the left-hand side. Is that's actually a bass sitting right on a drop-off. Right there. There's bass right there. So actually I was going a little bit fast and I slowed down to stop and see that object on that drop-off, and he was sitting right there hanging on. So I snapped a quick pic of it. This is just a screenshot of a different format I was messing around with. 3D structure scan. Unfortunately, I'm out of time, but 3D structure scan, I mean, it's pretty cool. It's great for finding channels, channel swings, bends, stuff like that. But for as far as, identifying harder bottom structure, 2D side scan is where it's at. But well, I thank you all for coming to my webinar. By the way, I'm Thomas Harris once again, and I thank y'all for stopping in. And hopefully y'all picked up something. I apologize for the technical difficulty with the screen. But if you have any questions, I got a pile of emails to get back. But I have this, should be recorded. You can shoot me an email if you want, the slideshow. So until next time, tight lines, and thank y'all for coming out to it, and have fun watching the basketball championship.